Hey guys, Brian and Nate here, Warriors of Light podcast, episode 3. We're happy to be back, happy to see everybody. How we doing, Nate?
Doing great. How are you?
Very good. Always well, my friend, always well.
That's a good thing to hear, Brian. I'm glad you're doing well over there in sunny old California.
Sunny California. It is another beautiful day, I will say that. How you doing in chilly North Carolina?
Oh, it's not as cold today, but I might bring my son out for a walk because it's actually going to be like 50, 60 degrees, something like that.
There you go.
What are we, weathermen? What are we doing over here?
Yeah, what are you doing?
I was debating on whether or not I was going to record outside today, but it's too windy for that.
Yeah, it's a little windy over here too. I want to go, like I told you before, record by the beach, but
yeah,
I really don't want a bunch of audio problems in the background. So
yeah, and then people give you funny looks talking about what we're talking about. I'm like, what the heck is he talking about over there?
I don't care about that. I'll be like, yeah, come have a seat and listen.
Yeah, you should probably listen to this, monkey mind. So that's actually what the first topic we were going to discuss today is how we as people categorize each other and judge each other based off of our beliefs and actions, I guess you could say. Okay. So for example, I'll give an example. So we were talking about this with how you have people of different faiths or backgrounds, like Christian, Muslim, or pagan and Wiccan. And it's like, when you really are tolerant of other people, then you open your mind to stuff.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, there's like left and right limits, right? If it's like absolutely insane, then you're like, no, bro, like if it doesn't resonate with you, basically, then no. You know what I mean? Like negative energy type stuff. But we have a habit of judging each other, like just based off what we categorize someone without really knowing anything about them.
Absolutely.
So like when, like, if I believe in God, but I don't, like, I'm like, to a Christian, they would call me a pagan. That's how they would, or they'd be like, you're not Christian because you don't believe in every little detail that, you know, there are some people who would say I'm not Christian technically.
Mm-hmm.
But have you experienced anything where I mean, you don't have to give super details, but where you're talking about something and someone is like looking at you like you have 3 heads on your shoulder and they are judging you?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Like with spiritual stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, in the last several years that I've grown and really opened my mind. I was raised Catholic, went to Christian church for a long time, and learned a lot of good stuff, but at the same time saw and had many questions because there was so much religious law and man-based thinking there, and not really coming from a God-centered heart, right? Like you said, everybody likes to categorize. I think that's that human monkey mind. That's just, everything's got to be in a box. We have to be Christian, Catholic, Muslim, whatever. And I tell people, like, why can't you just love God? At the end of the day, that's why we're here. We're here to love. We're all a part of God, and we're all here to love each other unconditionally. And so when I've been getting into deep conversations with people sometimes, and they have a very strong belief system, they'll look at me, like you said, with a funny look, or they're like, "Oh, doesn't make sense." And like I tell people, I'm like, me, when I learned to have a mind open to everything and attached to nothing and open to learning and growing, man, I learned more than I ever had in all the years of just having one belief system. Yeah. Because I started to go deeper, and there's like Taoism, which Taoism was never meant to be a religion, but like you go into the Tao and there's great teachings in there. You go into, some of the Buddhist teachings, and there's amazing teachings there, right? So there's so many different ways and so many different things we can learn from. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are closed off because of the categorization. So they're closed off to one way of thinking, and they're missing out on so much more. And then, like you said, we judge each other. we're not here to judge each other. We're not even here to judge ourselves, right? Let alone other people. I mean, why do we judge other people? Because we're judging ourselves. I tell people, when you're judging someone else, it's because you, on your own time, you're probably inside that mind of yours saying, I'm imperfect and I have this and I have that. And I tell people, like, anything that follows I am better be positive, better be a good thing. Right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is when like you said, when you're judging, you're projecting your own inner turmoil onto someone else.
Yeah, your own insecurities and your own judgments of yourself. And I tell people, again, like, that's why I truly practice every day, and I falter in it, but I practice every day trying not to judge anyone, trying to love everybody unconditionally. That's like one of my biggest goals every single day, is to love people without condition, no matter what their beliefs are.
It's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy to learn, because we all have that ego and that monkey mind, and we're like, oh, it has to be this way, or, oh, look at that homeless guy, he's a dirtbag. But then when you, like you said, because of what we've been programmed, like we talk about every episode.
Yep.
Like the other day when I gave that dude coffee, like I was telling my wife, I'm like, I'm learning that, one, I'm doing good things, because basically the way it happened was I gave him the coffee. It was cold outside, and he's like, thanks, man. And then he just walks inside to the diner that he's going into. And like my monkey mind wanted to be like, that's it, dude. Like, you're just like, thanks, like, oh, thanks, like you don't care. But then I started to think about, well, that's not the point.
Yeah,
that's not the point of why you did that. That was the right thing to do, to help someone else.
Absolutely. I firmly believe that we are here to love and help each other, and not with an expectation to get something back.
Exactly. Right? That's why you see all these influencers like, oh, I gave this homeless guy $100.
Yeah.
Like, why are you filming it?
That exactly.
Like, just for views?
That goes back, like, almost biblically, right? Like, where Jesus said, like go and serve and do things, but don't tell anyone, right? Why do you gotta, like, take a picture of yourself on Facebook and, like, you're handing money to a homeless person? You know what I mean? Like, why do you gotta record it? Why don't you just do it? And you're naturally getting positive energy coming back to you anyway, because you're out there helping, which is what God asks us to do anyway, is to love and help each other.
You get out what you put in, and that people, and that leads me into our next topic. This actually all relates, because it's basically our existence. Bob Proctor once said that we exist on 3 planes of existence at all times. It's an interesting concept to me, because there's some truth in it, I think. He said that we exist simultaneously in the physical, in the intellectual, and the spirit realm, basically. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's the whole point of what we were just talking about, is that we're so focused, like we talk about the monkey mind, like our instincts, our survival, that's like the animal inside of us, right? But we are so hyper focused, because humans historically, generally, if we can see it and touch it, then we believe it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's why we're hyper focused on the physical, because it's the most quote unquote real to us. But we neglect the intellectual and the spiritual realms of existence that we're also on.
Yeah,
and that plays into what we were just talking about, like doing good things. You get out you get back what you put out.
Yeah, that's a natural.
What you put into it,
That's a natural law of the universe. I tell people, what you give out is what you get back, right? And so that's, if you're giving out love and you're giving out positive energy to everyone, you're helping people. It naturally, it's just a universal law. It comes back to you, right? And it may not be the way you think. It may not be the way your monkey mind tells you it's going to come back. You don't do it for that reason. But just giving that energy out, I tell people, just having positive thoughts and sending those thoughts out, because our thoughts are energy. I tell people, you're shifting the collective, you're shifting the whole, right? And it's just like if you're putting out negative, you're shifting the whole and bringing down the collective. So I tell people, go out each day with the intention to serve and love everyone in any way. It could be something simple like holding a door open for somebody, because that's still putting someone else ahead of yourself, right?
Yeah, and doing it, like serving others.
Yeah,
that's what
because
we're all supposed to do.
Absolutely, because like you said, the monkey mind and survival mind. That's why people are so segregated and apart, is because we've been taught that we need to survive. The monkey mind's always wanting to be in survival mode, and I tell people, we don't have the tiger chasing us, right? Why are we living in survival mode?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can go down to the grocery store and buy some groceries. I mean, so what is it that you need to be in the survival selfish mode all the time, when you can say, you know what, I'm here to serve the collective and see how much you can change society. You know what I mean? You can change. Like I tell people, like, continue to grow yourself and live in an unconditional state of love, and then see how much you affect and influence people around you.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean that if you start living like that, things are going to instantly start happening like the way you want them to. So like, just because you like pick up trash off the side of the road doesn't mean like your life's going to change forever in that moment, but you're still doing a good thing, but things happen in divine timing.
Absolutely.
So like, if you, like, we were talking about this earlier, basically, or we've talked about it in the past, where if things might be going good, or we were talking about the God's plan that we shared, right? But you're going to keep going through this. Just because you do something good one day doesn't mean your life's going to be easy forever. Like,
no.
Because you'll repeat the same thing until you learn the lesson that those things are meant to teach you.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I picked up trash off the side of the road, I'm such a good person. And then the next day, something might not work out the way you wanted it to, and now you're like, oh, my life sucks. It's because you're not learning the lesson you're supposed to be learning.
Absolutely. And the other thing is like you're saying, if someone's doing something good, and then with the intention to A, get something back, or B, they think, okay, now life will be perfect. Like, everything that comes to you with a divine purpose. I tell people, there's no accidents, right? There are no accidents. I mean, literally everything happens for a reason. So everything that comes to you, if it's a challenge, it's there to teach you something. It's there to help you grow, right? So I've learned to look at it and ask God, okay, God, what am I supposed to learn from this? Like, why am I experiencing this situation right now? And when you get quiet, and kind of go into another topic, we talk about meditation. When you get the mind to be quiet, you start to hear things. Like, epiphanies will come up, right? When you're not letting the mind race onto all these random thoughts, you literally just kind of quiet it down. You'll start to have these epiphanies, start to understand, like, oh, that's probably why I'm experiencing that challenge right now, right? It's all there to serve you for your higher good. But unfortunately, like you said, most people will be like, why am I going through this? Poor me. And like, the other thing is, which I'm not going to say I never did this in the past, because I have said these things to myself in the past, where I would be like, I try to be such a good person. Why am I going through this? And it's like, bro, now I look at it so different. I'm like, you're going to have challenges. You could literally be the nicest person every second of every day, and you're going to have challenges come your way. Right. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with, like, wow, look at this mystical, amazing blessing that I just received out of nowhere. Or I'm in the midst of a situation where, okay, this is kind of challenging, whether it's with a family member, a friend, whatever it is, but I know it's there to teach me something that is going to benefit me, right?
Yeah, we've talked about that. That kind of makes me think about the concept of, like, being stoic, or like the concept, my idea of being like a warrior, you know what I mean? Like, especially when I was younger, I was like, the warrior is the most diverse. Like, you live in all elements of human nature, basically. You know what I mean? Like, there's no like singularity. You're like, because basically what it means is to be a warrior is that you have to be able to flow. And usually, people think about that in the physical sense, but warriors are actually very spiritual. Like, very, very spiritual.
Absolutely. If they're a true, I believe, like, it's like you and I talked about, like, we have warrior in us, right? Like, we will defend people we love. We will help. I'll defend anyone that I see that's, being mistreated or in danger. But it's like you said, they're spiritual. Like, you have the warriors that are out there because someone told them, hey, you need to go and kill these people for this reason. Well, that's not a true warrior, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day,
that's a soldier, basically.
it's a soldier. Yeah, that's someone just taking an order and going and doing something that's not even directed by their soul. I feel like a true warrior, like us, our podcast, Warriors of Light, like, like we are warriors for the better of all of life, all of humanity, right? Well, I think about my warrior now.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying my warrior now, I mean, if anything, comes out with the want of seeing everybody unite. And, that small group of people that wants to just continue to gain more and more crap for themselves. I'm I'm the type of person that's like, you know what? Yeah, fuck them. I'm ready to unite, and we just help them disappear.
Absolutely, because that's the whole thing. That relates back to the categorizing of things, right? Like we were talking about Robert Kennedy the other day.
Yeah.
Right. And you just made me think, because that's one of our topics, was how we categorize people. Basically, categorizing means you're dividing people, or you could say, being prejudiced or whatever you want to say, right? But that's exactly it. Is that, like, I've always heard. Have you ever heard the saying, like, a soldier follows orders, a warrior follows his heart?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've heard that. So, like, being a warrior means that you're also responsible for the people around you. And like you said, helping people. So innately, you are a leader, and we see things differently than most people.
Mm-hmm.
That also comes with the acceptance of death, because that it's not necessarily the end. It's just the end of your season, I guess you could say.
It's the end of this body, right? I mean, our souls. So if our soul's meant to come back, it's going to be back, right? And it's continued to serve its purpose. But the death of the body, the body's temporary anyway, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much just a machine.
It is. It's the vehicle that takes you around, right?
It's like our mind is the pilot. Our spirit is like, I don't know how you'd categorize it, but yeah.
Well, I would say overall, like, if you live from the heart, you're living from spirit, right? And if you live from the heart and you let the heart lead, see, because the mind, I'd say the mind, especially the monkey mind, shouldn't be the pilot in my opinion, because it's lying to us all the time. It's kind of like what we were just talking about before we started recording, right? Is people will make decisions out of they're making fear-based decisions because of a program that they were given, right? And I always tell people, I'm like, the people that come here, the spirits that come here and make the biggest difference tend to always be very different than everyone else. Right?
Dude, I was talking about that with my brother. He's like, I'm the black sheep of the family. And I'm like, yeah? You think you're the only one? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Because the black sheep is usually, it goes back to that term, don't be a sheep, right? Like, stop being so much a part of the crowd and stand out. And yeah, people are going to look at you like you're crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many times have we talked when I'm like, oh, this might sound crazy, and you're like, no, dude. Because most people aren't going to relate with what we're talking about.
That's the thing, right? What I've realized is when we're being authentic to who we actually are, who our true soul is at the depths of our heart, we're going to attract the people that are intended to be around us. In a sense, our soul tribe, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then the people that are not intended to be around us will fade away, right?
Yeah, because that's something I was saying earlier, is that I've started to notice I've been around people that I don't even know that are just out loud talking about spiritual stuff. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like, this is a little strange. Like, okay.
But I love being around people like that, because we can have that open conversation about things that may be a little esoteric to people, but yet at the same time it's like we understand each other, right?
Oh yeah.
And like I always tell people, I have nothing against anyone, so if people don't think the way I think, that's okay. I love them anyway, but I may not spend my free time with them, because I'll be there to help them if they ever need help, but I may not spend my free time with them just because we'll have no understanding of each other. And I think that's the whole thing. When people can start to be very open-minded and have an open heart to all teachings and belief systems and things, and we start to just again live from the heart, we will start to be able to be with anyone and be like, hey, I'm going to listen to you. I may not resonate with everything you're saying, but I'm going to listen to you without judgment and love you for who you are, right?
Yeah.
And
there's the whole thing about categorizing.
Yeah.
Because that just goes back to the whole oh, you're a witch, you're a pagan, you're Wiccan, whatever, or you're an atheist.
Yeah.
And it's we're all the same, dude.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you're from Africa or if you're from Canada or Australia. We're all the same. Yeah. We just have our own different programmings that we've been taught.
Exactly. The first 7 years of life, we're being programmed, right? We're in the theta brainwave all the time for the first 7 years of life. So that's when people come in and say, this is what you are. These people are good. These people aren't. This is how you're supposed to act. This is what you're supposed to be. This is right. This is wrong. This whole sense of duality, when that's another thing, different topic, I guess, in a sense. But at the same time, I've learned there is no duality, man. It's all one. And when, like you just said, we are all one.
Yeah.
So, when we understand, we're not separate from God, we're not separate from each other, like we were programmed to believe, that's when things will shift and people will realize, oh, we don't got to be different. Oh, because you think a little differently than I, we're still all from the same creator, from God. We're all one. At the end of the day, we're all going back to the same creator, right?
Yeah.
And so I tell people, again, even the people that are here, unfortunately, which I wish they weren't here, killing people and doing things like that, but at the end of the day, their soul is still going back. They're just creating heavy karma, heavy energy for themselves, and that's what I tell people. So, those are you don't want to put out negativity, because all you're doing is just stacking up that negative shit that you got to come back and deal with.
Well, that's why I shared that, basically reject the modern world, not because it is modern, but because it is evil.
Mm-hmm.
And people will turn that into, oh, it must be my neighbor, or but it's no, dude, it's the systems that are in place. It's not, most people are not bad.
Exactly.
Or negative. Well, actually, most people, what I mean is on a negative plane, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the thing is when you think about God, and we realize, and when I think about the universe, and even something as simple as the sun, or stars, or whatever, God, we talked about divine timing and how everything happens when it's meant to.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's being violent, then I guess that was meant to happen, right? But it's maybe not, it's influenced by negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
But God exists outside of our own time. So so no matter what happens, we get so angry and we allow negative energy to build up, then we're going to act out eventually. But because we get so frustrated and focused, and then we take it out, then we project it onto others if we don't learn how to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
So,
absolutely. It's the experiences we have in the human world. People just continue to push things down, and eventually, they act out on it, and unfortunately, in a light that's not benefiting the collective. And the other thing is then you have people following, again, belief systems that they were handed, and
Yep.
maybe in the belief system, it's we need to have the power here. No one needs to have anything above anyone else when we're all here to be one and all to serve each other, right? I mean, Again, if everybody truly lived from their heart and understood that we are all one, we are all a collective, you wouldn't see war, you wouldn't see anybody harming anyone, because people would be here to truly just love, right?
Yep.
And they look at each other and say, hey, how can I help you? Like, how can I serve you? What do you need? Right? And that's the way I believe that we're intended to live. I believe we're, hey, you know, wake up, ask God, how can I serve today? I mean, that's what I do in the morning. Show me how I can serve today. How can I make a difference? It could be the smallest thing in the world, but use me in it.
Well, that's what we talked about before. With that, I relate that to small inspired actions.
Absolutely.
You're doing, it doesn't matter how minute something might seem. If you're doing something based off of what you believe is good, or what is good, I should say, not what you believe is good, because someone could believe, like, I don't know, beating a dog is good, you know?
Yeah.
But what is good, when you focused on what is good and what you can do that is good, then you're basically, you're following God's plan anyway.
Absolutely.
So that means you're living in it, which means you'll also be able to manifest things that are positive, because it will come back to you.
Absolutely. And it's like you said, small inspired action. I mean, you know, I feel like we have a lot of society always trying to push things to happen. Oh, we got to take massive action. Well, from all of my studying and learning, it's the small inspired action. It could be something grander, right? But it's coming from an inspired place. It's true inspiration inside of you, you know, and you're like, hey, I really want to go do this. Even us starting this podcast, this was an inspired step that we took, knowing that it's coming from a great place from our hearts, and we want to help put content out there that can, you know, hopefully help people look at life a little bit differently, right? And start to raise the energy, the vibe of the collective. I mean, that's I want to see the whole just continue to shift to where we're just ascending to this wonderful place of love and non-judgment. And so every step we take, no matter how small, toward that direction is benefiting the whole. Right.
Yeah. That's why I brought up Robert Kennedy. I didn't get to finish, or I forgot what I was going to say, but that's kind of the concept of what he is running for president for.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, Democrats are jacked up, Republicans are jacked up. We need someone who's actually for the people.
Absolutely.
And it's like,
he's stepping away from the categorization, right?
Yeah.
He's worried about that. He actually wants to make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. Those are the people, if we're going to put anybody in leadership, those are the people that need to be in leadership. You know, are people
that's what I'm saying, man. I agree.
You know, that's why I say I don't follow politics. I don't give a shit about politics, really, because I tell people, you know, all of those things are all they are doing is segregating people, right?
Yes.
Again,
100%.
Before, whether it's politics, race, religion, all of those things were put into place by man to keep us apart. Because when we come together, dude, when we're all leading with love, then who can take that out? No one.
Well, that's why, you know, that reminds me again of everything that's happening in society that you see that's being pushed is basically there to program you, like we talked about.
Yeah.
So like, and we talked about this on the last podcast too, I think, but it's like, at the end of my time on this planet, there's only one person I'm answering to.
Absolutely.
That's it. So like, what that means is, like, when we're talking about like politics and stuff, like our society has been filled with so much basically propaganda, I guess you could say, to the point where the people are like blindly just worshiping politicians and celebrities, like, oh, I agree with everything that they just said, they'll fix all my problems. And it's like, no, you can fix your problems.
Yeah.
Because you have power. That's something we all have power too.
But see, that's why. But again, that's a program, right? We were taught that it's everything external or everyone external that's going to help us, right? It's like I tell people with the Roman Catholic Church. What did they say? You know, come and give us your money, because God talks to you guys, and we will always tell you what God said. And it's funny how God keeps telling them to ask us for more money. Yeah. I'm like, that's odd, because I don't think that that's what our God says. And I tell people, we're not separate from God. We were taught that we were, but we're all a part of God. We're all one with God. And so I tell people, I think prayer is so powerful. When you're talking to God, the prayers instantaneously heard, right? And I believe that when you pray with an earnest heart, these things are coming to you. They're coming to, but again, like we talked about earlier, it's in divine time.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's no, we have this linear crap that we live off of, this man-made time concept. And so we think that, hey, it's been a year. Why haven't I received what I asked God for? Or I've been working on this business that's serving people. Why hasn't it blown up yet? Well, guess what? You just keep going. And if you're inspired to do so, keep doing it, and you're benefiting the whole. Like, you're going to see the fruit of all of the things that you're doing. Right.
Yeah. That's the thing, man. Don't quit. It's like when stuff is getting tough, that's right before the breakthrough happens.
Absolutely. I always tell, that's the old saying, right? It's always darkest before the dawn.
Yeah.
And so, so right before everything is about to just become more beautiful than you could even humanly conceive of, like you finally, like you keep going through that darkness, and bam, you're just like, wow, look where I'm at now. Then you look back on your life, and you're like, holy crap, like, look how much has changed in a year. Because you kept going, because you were inspired to do something. Again, people like some of the greatest saints that have been here, right? I mean, came and made the biggest change. They were pushed back against all the time. Jesus was pushed back against all the time. He didn't quit.
Well, yeah.
He didn't quit. It was like, yeah, I'm going to keep going. So you find your purpose, your purpose, and you keep going.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it, too, because I was going to say, that's pretty much keep moving forward, right? That's like something I heard here in the military all the time, right? That's one thing I am thankful for, is that it taught me to be resilient.
Yeah.
To not we had this conversation where I don't quit.
Yeah.
Like, there's no quitting. Especially if it resonates with you, don't quit. Whatever. With 2024, I hope it's a year for a lot of people to realize how much potential everybody has as an individual.
Absolutely.
Because
the power in all of us is amazing.
Yeah, there's so much potential. Imagine if something that you tried 10 years ago, you never quit it,
I know.
Where would you be now? I was telling my wife, with this stuff, I'm like, man, I should have started this a year ago. But then I had to remind myself, no, this is divine timing. It didn't work out then. Yeah.
There's again, like we said before, we met at that position that we were given, but we didn't meet for that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, God uses things for a grander purpose. And a lot of times in the human 3D realm, we don't see that there's all this stuff going on behind the scenes in the spiritual realm. And God's like, man, I'm just working all this together, and you guys don't even understand what's about to happen and how I'm going to use you guys. Right. And it's like you said, if it aligns with you, don't quit. And no matter what the world's telling you, no matter what it looks like in the physical realm, like you said earlier, we think we have to see this 3D, we need to see the fruits of our labor immediately, right? Well, we don't, dude. I mean, we're here to continue to follow those inspired actions. And even when we don't see anything coming from it, that's okay, because eventually, again, I always believe that it's much greater than we can even see in our human mind, right? Yeah. Because I believe there's so much greater coming if you're serving your truest purpose, but then you have the people that are just spinning their wheels, doing the same thing over and over and wondering why nothing's changing, because they're living a fear-based program that was handed to them, which is sad. When I see that now, I always encourage people hey, step away from that. You don't like that job, quit. Do you feel that's aligned with the greatest soul's purpose? No, then why are you in it? right? Because if you trust and you ask God, hey, am I supposed to walk away from this? Supposed to do, all your needs are going to be met, right? And a lot of times greater, because listening to the spirit, you're not listening to the monkey mind telling you, hey, the world told you got to do this to be quote unquote safe. I'm like, come on now.
And when you start living for your soul purpose, SOUL, soul purpose, you'll start to open your mind and awaken a little, you'll start to see signs like that will reinforce, like, oh, I was just thinking this, or oh, I was thinking about doing this, or I am doing this. And you'll see a synchronicity, or this is what happens to me. Like yesterday, when we were going to record, but we didn't, I forgot, I was doing something. I was in the kitchen, and I see synchronicities that I had not seen before. And it meant like and I was talking to my wife about something. It was probably related to the podcast or something important. I know it was something important, but it was positive. But and I saw 2 angel numbers, and I was like, and it basically means like you're on the right path.
Yeah.
So I'm like, everything I'm seeing now, especially when it's like something to do with this. So basically what I'm trying to tell people is, to our viewers, is that if you are doing something and your gut is telling you like this is not right or this is wrong, then stop doing it.
Yeah.
Once you start doing stuff where you're like, oh, I feel good doing this, or oh, it excites you, or oh, you enjoy it, then you'll start to see little signs, even if it's just a hobby. Even if you have a job that you hate, but you're still doing a hobby with something that you love.
Yeah.
If you make that your purpose, whatever that is, as long as it's, positive, you'll see signs that are reinforcing that you're on the right path.
Absolutely. And typically you'll come to the place where I tell people you're always being nudged, right? God's always nudged to tell people, like, if you keep going in that direction, eventually that will be what you do all the time in life, right? Yeah. Because that's truly why you were put here. So those other things, like the job like you said, the job you hate, will fade away, but that's where you have to let go too. Like I tell people, you have to fully let go, let go of your belief systems, let go of fear, and just trust that things are going to work out. Because every time when it feels uncomfortable, you're going the right direction, right? But boy, the ego is going to come in and be like, what are you doing? No. And that's when people start to back off, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. And I tell people, like, no. You tell the ego, shut the hell up, and you just keep pushing forward. You just keep stepping forward. That discomfort, that will get quiet too, and it'll go away.
And that's what we mean by the flow state.
Yeah.
That's when you're flowing, is when you're not allowing your insecurities or your ego to get in the way, and you're just following what your intuition is telling you, or what God or the universe is telling you. Like, oh, we were just talking about this. Oh, boom, 11:11 on the clock. That's not a coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidences.
This morning when you texted me and you saw 10:10, literally we were talking about this, and we were, talking about inspired ideas, right? And then you see 10:10. When you go look at 10:10 and the meaning of it, it says that you're on your divine path. You're in divine order, right? And so, yeah, you just keep walking that direction. And again, it doesn't mean it's always going to be comfortable. I think that's the other thing, is people think sometimes, like, you're on your path and you feel great, and you're like, well, why does it seem like things are working out? Well, it's because that's the monkey mind coming back into play, saying, hey, there's a time frame, we should be on this already, you should be here by now, or whatever the case is. But again, God's like, I am building you up, just trust me and keep moving.
Well, that's the thing. I was going to say, we talked about it a little bit. You're 100% correct. Because and we've talked about this before, and you've talked about it a lot actually, is when you're on your path, it's going to be uncomfortable to your human side of you, right? Your physical realm of existence, and a little bit of your intellectual. But basically what's going to happen is you're going to have stuff that you're going to get called out on from your own inner stuff. So you're going to go through something and God's having you go through it, and you're like, that's you basically healing so that you can pursue what you're meant to pursue.
Absolutely.
So you're going to you're going to be uncomfortable like around other people in certain scenarios, but what's the most important is the inner work that's going on while you're going through that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And that's 100% correct. Cause think about it, like as you're, and like you said, you're not only, you're going to be healing internally, but as you're walking in your direction, it's your divine purpose. The scrutiny that's going to come from other people is going to be there. Right? I mean, people are going to come against you. People are going to say things about you. People will try to bring up the past. How often do you see somebody doing great things and they're like, they're making change, and people will be like, well, remember when they used to do this? I'm like, who gives a shit? Right? I mean, I tell people stay programmed by their past. They live in their past over and over, keep falling back into, oh man, I can't believe I did this. Oh man, I can't believe I hurt so-and-so. I can't, hey, guess what? You made mistakes. That's the human side of it. Stop judging yourself. Don't live in that anymore. Live in the present.
Yep.
This present moment is truly all we have. So why
not
make all that exists? So why not make the very most of it? Why not be grateful for every second of it? And watch what will happen if this is where you live every day, right? If every second you're just living here, boom. You're not worried about what you're doing Monday. Today's Sunday. We have today, at whatever time it is, this is what we have. So
yeah, you're not worried about the report that's due by Friday on my desk, Exactly. You're like, oh, it's my day off, then whatever, cool. Like, I'm chilling.
Yeah, like literally, guess what? If this is your time, live in your time. What are you inspired to do? We're inspired to do our podcast, right? Then that's what I'm going to do. I really don't care what anybody else thinks I should be doing. I'm going to do what my heart's telling me to do.
Yep.
Right. And you talk about freedom, I think like true freedom, I tell people, like, that's the most freeing feeling, when you really just no longer care what anybody thinks that you should be doing and how you should be acting. You're not harming people. If you're literally living from a space of love from your heart, that's all you need to be doing. Right? How many people are running around, which I did this for a long time. I say all the time too, I'm a recovering people pleaser, because I was running around always seriously.
I'm just checking the weather.
Pretty hot?
No, I was just checking the weather.
Oh, because for years I ran around wanting to fix everybody's problems. I love helping people. That's just an innate thing inside of me. But I know that I can't fix everybody's issues and problems, and people need to heal themselves. And so, I can't make everybody happy. That's why I say recovering people pleaser, because so-and-so might be upset with me because I didn't act or be or do a certain thing they wanted me to do. Guess what? It's not my job. My job is for me to work on the inside of me and love and be happy with me, right? And then the right folks are going to love you for you. I tell people, like, you will attract the people and things that are supposed to be there when you're just being authentically yourself.
Yeah, because it's genuine, and
it may not be what other people agree with. Well, why aren't you acting like this? Well, because I don't feel like myself when I act that way.
Yeah.
I tell people I used to shape shift all the time, like, for years, because I wanted to make sure everybody was happy around me. And when I finally stopped doing that and started saying, hey, Brian, who really are you? This is who you really are. I started to feel the freedom. And I know, and that's the thing, is I love the fact that I don't care about people's validation anymore.
Yeah, like, I've gotten to that point pretty much.
Yeah.
The last couple of years. Like, I don't give a shit, dude.
I don't either. I don't need anybody to come along and pat me on the back and be like, hey, Brian, you're doing great. I'm like, yeah, I don't, appreciate it, but don't care. You know what I mean?
Or like, oh, you're wearing the, like, how when you're in high school or some shit, and you're like, oh, you're wearing those shoes? Oh, like, dude, that's a good point. We need to stop worrying about what everybody else thinks too.
Yeah, seriously. Like, it doesn't matter.
Like, that's the problem with social media. It's like, oh, that's actually an apple, not a pear or whatever, and people will argue about it, and it's like, does this really matter right now?
I know. Yeah, and it's the truth. It's people will spend this time on social media and whatever, and well, this is the coolest
thing. They could be creating.
Yeah, that's like exactly.
We are. They could be creating positive things, but they're focused on negative.
Exactly. Well, because again, that's a distraction, right? And unfortunately, the programs that society's been handed is that these negative, goofy things are where you should place your energy. Guess what? Where your attention goes, energy flows. So if your attention's going toward negative stuff, guess what you're creating for yourself? More and more of that. And then when you look around and your life always looks like chaos, you're like, what the hell is going on? Well, it's what you're
Actually,
focused on every day.
you just made me think. So, you know the band Creed, right?
Yeah.
So, I was watching little plug, I guess. I don't know where Theo Vaughn was interviewing Scott Stapp, this lead singer, and
Mhm.
what you just said, where would you say where energy goes, it flows, or whatever? What'd you say?
Where attention goes, energy flows.
Attention goes. There you go. So there's a lyric in his one of his songs, and it says, "What consumes your thoughts controls your life."
Absolutely.
And Scott Stapp, basically, he grew up in a very rough. He had a rough upbringing from parents who were like super Christian, but the way they did it was like way. You have to watch it because it was not good.
Yeah.
But he felt, and I had been listening to Creed since I was a little kid, in the '90s.
Yeah.
And or early 2000s, whenever
I think it,
that late
Yeah.
90s, early 2000s.
yeah.
And he said, and it makes sense. Like he said that, you know, and I'm not being exact here; it's not verbatim, but he was basically talking about how if that's how you can bring people closer to God was through his music, is what he was saying.
hmm
But that's what made me think of it was you just said where your attention goes, where energy flows. What consumes your thoughts controls your life. So if you're thinking, it's the same concept. If you're thinking about negative stuff all the time, then all you're going to see and it's going to happen is negative.
Of course, because that's where your perception's at, right? That's
where your energy is flowing.
You're perceiving everything as negative. It's it's kind of like a Albert Einstein quote. He said, it's up, I don't know the exact quote, but it's basically he says, it's up to you. Do you see this as a friendly or a unfriendly universe? Do you live in a friendly universe? And I tend to look at the good. I tend to be optimistic, and I think that there's good in everything, right? At the core of every person, I'm like, there's good in every person. At the core of who they are, they're great, right? But it's just because we've been conditioned and programmed by this world. So you see all this, you get the people again, like you said, it's like a perception. It's they're focused on negative, so they think that everything in life is negative, and they're missing all the beauty, And that's why I tell people, you can tell me my head's in the clouds all you want, but I'm gonna keep it there because I would rather be constantly looking at the good than anything else.
I was having a conversation the other day about, basically why the Middle East is at war all the time.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of things that play into it, but I won't dive into all that. But basically, one of the things is that they're all divided into different groups of people, and they have so much pride and so much, like, I don't want to say entitlement, but they're so like honed in on their group of people.
Mhm.
That's why they all fight each other all the time. That's one reason.
And what does that break down? It's segregation in a belief system, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
if they dropped all of that and just looked at each other and said, "Hey, we're equal. Oh man, I love you anyway. Cool."
So like, I didn't know this, and maybe some of our viewers can comment if you have any knowledge of this. So the example I'll use is, so like Lebanese people, which I'm part Lebanese, right? You know that. And Lebanese people are not considered Arab by other Lebanese people. We're not Arab. So we're actually, Lebanese people are technically a Semitic people, but there's a whole, like, I was on this group and it's like we're Phoenician, which is true, which is an ancient civilization that basically created the phonetic alphabet and founded different colonies in North Africa and across the Middle East and traded with the Greeks and all this other stuff, right? But they weren't, in the Bible they're known as Canaanites, but but the Greeks called them Phoenicians. But that's the thing, is people were arguing in these comments, oh, we're Arab or we're not Arab, and you're Phoenician, you're not, blah blah blah. And it's like all these people have. That's what the term was. They have a claim. Like, dude, that was how many years ago? You're born now. Like, stop arguing about. Like, oh, I'm Phoenician. Oh, I'm Arab. Or oh, I'm fucking whatever. Like, that's where we get categorized, and then it's all focused on negative stuff because we're letting the ego fuel everything.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of ironic, is that the most holy place, the Middle East, right? Because that's where all the three major religions were founded, allegedly.
Yeah.
Because they also do say there's an Ethiopian Bible that predates Christian, the Old Testament or whatever. I don't know. Don't quote me on it. Correct me in the comments if I got that wrong. But that's the thing. People get, even something thousands of years ago, people are still arguing about.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you could have like a laptop and an iPhone, but you're fucking living in a mud hut because you don't agree with the guy next to you, you know?
That's where we've talked about before, is there has to be somebody to break the cycle, right? And I always say that about like people in your family lineage. I tend to be the one that broke the cycle of just like the continuous way of living, I guess, by my family, for years and years. Not that it was like anything super negative. It's just simply they're just following what they were handed, and then my soul comes along and says, yeah, we're done with that shit. Let's change it up, and
Well,
that's what I tell.
We're talking about with the black sheep.
Yeah. And that's why
the black sheep is the one who breaks the mold.
Absolutely. And that's why I tell people, be okay with being that. Be okay with being different. Guess what? No, not everybody's going to like you. That's okay. The right people, again, I say it all the time. I said it earlier in the podcast, is that the right people will love you. And that's what you want. You want the people that love you for you. Right? If they love you because you act, the way everybody else does, or what is quote unquote cool, if that's why they're liking you, then they're liking you for the wrong reason. Right? I don't want somebody liking me because of, false reasons. I want people to be like, man, I genuinely love who the hell you are, even with your neurosis and your goofy things that you do. Like, yeah, cool, perfect, because we all have it. We all have something.
Yeah, if you're genuine and you do good things, then the right people will come to you.
Absolutely.
That's why, like, that's why, being a part of that too is like setting boundaries. Like, how you allow people to treat you is, if you allow them to treat you a certain way, then they think it's okay and they keep doing it.
Absolutely. That's like kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Like, that even goes for, that's family, kids, whoever, right? Like, if you continuously fall into the same traps because they're, being impatient with you, or they're telling you this is the way things need to be done, you're 100% correct. That's one of the things I had to learn, was being, again, a recovering people pleaser, was setting healthy boundaries. And guess what? Those boundaries might piss people off. That's okay. They'll get over it. You know what I mean? Because I have to, support what makes my soul feel good, and that's not always going to be what everybody else wants me to be doing. So and I'm.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. But that's the thing, is that people will be like, "Oh, you're wrong." And I don't care if people think I'm wrong. Like, that's the thing too. Is we're not, like, I think you and I agree. Like, we're not here to convince people what we're saying is true. That's another thing, is people are so freaking hell-bent on telling other people that they're wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, why can't you just relax? Because that's their own, because that's the thing, is they don't feel validation with themselves. So they have to prove someone else wrong to get validation from an external source.
Which is an ego, right? It's an ego-based living. Because it's 100% truth. That's why I say, like, just because I believe the way I believe and I think the way I think, like, I don't expect everybody to. I remember when I was first growing into my spiritual, like, self of like,
I don't mean to interrupt you. This is the angel number. This is one of the angel numbers I saw yesterday on my time is 202.
Okay.
I never see
Awesome.
those numbers. So
Wow.
that's how you know, ladies and gentlemen, that you're on the right path. If you start seeing
Absolutely.
numbers that you haven't seen that synchronize, then something is changing.
Carl Jung used to say, like, the more that you see synchronicities, the more you know. The fact that the more you see them in a day, like, the more you know that you're in alignment and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's why I say, like, those synchronicities bring more truth than, like, your ego mind ever will, right? Because your ego mind is going to, like, again, when you're looking at everything in the worldly perspective, you're going to be like, oh man, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, it doesn't seem like it, blah blah blah, because you're trying to create from a worldly 3D realm, as opposed from creating out here from the ether, where when you're in divine alignment, you're creating with God, you're co-creating with God, right? And so I tell people that's where you want to be creating from. You're not trying to make shit happen here, and it seems like it's so difficult to get things to work because you're trying to force things that aren't meant to be. And even if you get success, it fades away, right? So why not spend your energy and your time living from your heart again, and co-creating with God, and man, you'll never regret that, right?
Well, that's the thing, man. Like, it's a beautiful thing to be able to go through what we're talking about and then realize, like, one, you're not here for selfish reasons, and two, like, finding your path is a beautiful thing, because then everything around you will start to make a lot more sense as to why you've experienced certain things in your lives. When you think about your past, or when you think about, oh, this happened to me, and then you get older and you're like, oh, well, what lesson did I learn from that?
Yeah.
So when you're on the right path, that's also part of breaking the generational curses, is you're learning things that no one in your family has learned.
Yeah.
Necessarily, like, you know what I mean? So you're the next level to evolve. I think as we evolve as humans, we're evolving basically spiritually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we're like overall, which is why they say, the awakening is happening, and a lot of people are starting to realize, like, oh, like, all this stuff, man. So I was telling my wife, I think mankind goes in cycles where we're all, like, basically programmed, and then we start off basically in the Stone Age.
Mm-hmm.
This is just my theory. And we're all like, ooga booga, we're dumb. And then we fucking, like, go through thousands of years, and then we get to the height of civilization where everything's awesome, and then it starts to go downhill. It's a cycle. And then we basically screw ourselves into a corner by developing all this high-speed technology. And then a solar flare happens, and then we get right back to the Stone Age, and it's like, oh, worship the sun god. You know what I mean? That's the cycle. So, like, we can break that cycle as a species if we truly serve the purpose we're put here for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they say, hard times create hard men, and weak times, or whatever. And it's like, or whatever that saying is, I've heard it 1,000 times. You know what I'm saying, right?
Talking about.
But all of that, dude, is based on the freaking monkey mind.
Yeah. It's like somebody's saying, like, like they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Old dogs can learn new tricks all the time. I tell people, like, you're never too old to learn something new, to shift, to grow, to be different, right? And so, yeah, I mean, like, if you just continue to expand your mind and expand and live from, I say it a million times, but live from the heart, you continue to grow deeply and spiritually. And if we're all doing that, imagine what we see happen on this planet.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's why that's one of my visions and goals, is just to continue to encourage people to go within and grow from within. And that doesn't mean perfection. That's the other thing. I think that's also another man-made construct, is like, oh, well, you're starting to grow spiritually, you better be perfect. I'm like, that's not true.
That's where meditating comes in.
Yeah.
You can't start working on your inner self until you start meditating, and prayer is a part of that. Like, prayer is pretty much a form of meditation.
Of course.
And vice versa.
I always say prayer, the way I look at it is prayer speaking to God, and meditating is listening. right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's my practices. I mean, every morning, every day is talk to God in the morning, and then right after I talk, I get quiet, put some 432 hertz music on or 528 hertz music on, and I get into deep meditation and just listen. And that's what's helped me so much. Also, that's what also has helped me self-reflect and go within myself and realize like why I was repeating certain cycles, especially in relationships were a challenge for me. Because I was repeating the same cycle because I was living off of a hurt, and going deep within and getting quiet surfaced all of that. It took a while. It took several years for me to see it and find it, but now I'm like, okay, that's not a cycle I'm going to repeat anymore, right? But that's been with the internal work. That's taken internal work and several years of it. Again, it's one of those things where we were talking about earlier. Things don't just happen again like overnight, like we would like in the human mind we'd like them to. It's like, oh, I meditated once, I'm enlightened. Yeah, that doesn't happen. You just keep going. You just keep doing these practices and these things that are benefiting and growing you. And over time, and you take those small inspired actions over time, you're like, wow, I have changed. Things have changed. Things are better, whatever it is, right? But that takes the continuous growth and the steps in the right direction.
Well, right, yeah, and that's the thing, kind of like a little segue here, I guess. But we can go back to talking about RFK because that relates. But see, that's, what the way I look at it is each individual has to work on themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like we're just talking about. But once people start to group up, that's where you have to be careful, because then you'll be influenced by each other and you might not all have the same ideas or goals or values. So like, if we can all do inner work, then why can't our leadership, like government and politicians and whatever, there has to be some, like we're talking about breaking generational curses, there has to be someone to break the curse of the collective too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I think, I mean, not to get political, but maybe RFK is one of those people.
Well, I think so too. I think he's definitely, I think his whole family lineage, that was the goal of, his uncle and everybody, was to literally like change the way politics have been built and change the way the country was ran. But why do you think that those are the people that end up being taken out? I mean, why is that? Because you have these folks that are like, hey, there's no way, we're not going to let things change. We got to have power. Again, that's ego, right? And if people were just to release that and say, okay, like, let's let this person come in that actually cares about everyone, and let's see what happens, then you see true lasting change happen.
Well, this is sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
But that's the thing. You just reminded me of, it's easier to connect to negative energy and negative entities than it is to speak to, sometimes, depending on what, I guess, disclaimer, depending on how you control your life, or what leads your life, I should say, whether it's ego or faith. Mm-hmm. But like Alex Jones talked about, how it's so easy to get power, fame, wealth, if you basically work with lower vibrating entities or energy, is what he said on Joe Rogan at one point. And he's like, but for you to be a good person, if you don't desire power or anything like that, then you can speak with the higher entities, which he says God, like basically we all exist on, he basically kind of touched on the realms of existence, but he said we live in different dimensions, and you mentioned that a little bit. Like heaven is a different dimension, hell's a different dimension, and earth is a different dimension. So he was saying that all of these world leaders and the elitists, they are in contact with like negative entities, and they worship negative deities, and they're like, so that's what I'm saying, where you need someone who's like going to bring light to all this stuff and actually be someone who's for the people and not for a business deal with China or war with Ukraine. You know what I'm saying?
And that is absolutely true, man. Like, it's I would say it definitely is, especially because things have been built off of negativity for so long. It is much easier just to follow that negative crowd, and then you will obtain certain worldly things, right? But I also believe that, yeah, it may be a more challenging path at times to go the route of trying to do good and bring forth great change. But at the same time, at the end of the day, your soul's going to feel nourished and fed all the time, right? And when you're being divinely led, allowing yourself to be divinely led, all your needs and all that stuff are going to be met, and a lot of times exceeded, right? But but you, and then you get to go to bed every night knowing, like, hey, I did my best today in trying to bring forth positive change. Why do you think so many of these people that do maybe follow the other way, right? Half the time they end up like completely jacked up on drugs and things like that all the time, and you know, like, and what I mean by drugs, like hard shit that's not really doing like any good for them, because they're so unhappy with themselves, right? And that's why you see that, because they're living in this way that regardless, when they go to bed at night, they're like, oh my gosh, like, look at the crazy shit I just did, you know, look at all the lives I just lost. And it doesn't matter, some of them can act like they don't care, but at the end of the day, dude, we all have a soul, and our soul is pure. So, you know, if you're living from that ego, that's why a lot of those people kill themselves and stuff too, because they're just like, you know, I can't handle this shit anymore, right? So I tell people, live from a pure state, and you'll never regret it, right? I mean, I've definitely not perfect my entire life, and when I've done things that I know hurt someone's feelings and caused those types of things, like, I try not to live in the past at all anymore, but I do say, like, man, like, that's something that's not from who I genuinely am at my heart, right? Because I literally only love to give out good, to give out love, to give out positivity, but I did go through my periods of selfishness and make mistakes. So,
and that's the thing too, is that I was actually just telling my wife, I told you about how I gave that dude coffee. And I'm like, me and my wife were talking about the concept of, you never know, if you're like just saying hi to someone, if you could change their whole fucking day.
Absolutely.
You know? So like you mentioned, you know, people killing themselves and stuff. It's like, I guess my message, or our message to people who will watch this, would be, don't be afraid to talk to people about stuff, because you hold all this negativity in, and you never let it escape, either if that escape is through crying, through talking about it, through writing it down. You know, don't resort. It's easy to say, hard to practice, because I've had instances where this is what I wish someone would have told me, is don't get into alcohol or drugs, because that's going to lower your vibration even more, and you're just going to be in it. But the way you get out of those thoughts, like suicidal thoughts or like self-hating thoughts, is like either talking to someone, writing about it, and also like reaching out to people, like check on your friends, you know?
Absolutely.
And also is teaching yourself to think, no matter what's happening, is it's all for a reason. So
and it's all for
so you don't allow yourself to get to that state, because what we don't understand, we fear. So, and that applies to everything. If something wrong happens in our life, we're like fearful, that's just gonna play off those negative thoughts of like, oh, I suck, oh, I'm not good enough, or blah blah blah, it's my fault. And realize, before you can, I guess I should say, before you can forgive others, forgive yourself. And ask God for forgiveness, you know?
Well, I think once you forgive yourself, you God, like I said, we're part of God, so you instantaneously give. We give, once we forgive ourselves, we're instantaneously forgive, right? That's why I say so many people are running around beating themselves up for things they did 10 years ago, when none of that even matters. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, if you did things that hurt people, whatever, that it's okay that you just say, oh, well, you know, no big deal. No, but you don't live in the past. If you're no longer living and doing the same things that you did to hurt people, like, forgive yourself and move forward. Because like I said, it's amazing how we judge ourselves so deeply all the time for things that have happened, you know, 5 years ago. Um, when we have a God who instantaneously forgives us, unconditionally loves us all the time. This is why I say I don't even understand why humans in general have conflict. You have families and people that are, you know, pissed off at each other for something that was said or done or whatever. And I'm like, people, we have a God who forgives us instantaneously, and we're a part of God. So then why can't we forgive each other and be like, hey, I forgive you. You said something goofy. You did something goofy. I understand. That was the human falter, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like I've always practiced that for the most part. Is I've always practiced like forgiving everybody, no matter who's hurt my feelings or whatever. I've always, my whole life, I realized I've always just forgiven, because I'm like, why am I going to hold on to that? It's not, I'm harming myself. Why would I do that? Right?
Yeah, because no matter that's the thing, is the truth behind it is when someone is, well, depending on the scenario, I guess, but most of the time, if it's something silly like you have an argument or whatever, usually that's that person projecting, like we said earlier.
Yeah.
So
they're projecting.
Like, it has nothing to do with you.
No, and I tell people, you know, anger comes from hurt. And I tell people, so when people are when the people like spew something at you or they pop off on you, they're hurting inside from something, and it could be something that happened years and years ago, and they're still holding on to it, right? And they just don't know how to deal with it. So that's how they deal with it. They project it onto other people. And I tell people, you know, so if you slow down enough to like, even just to ask the person, like, you know I didn't do anything to you, or if I did, I apologize, but like, what's going on inside of you that's causing you to feel this way and respond this way? Maybe you'll open up that door for somebody to be able to be like, man, no one's ever asked me that. Like, this is what I'm hurting from, right? And I love giving people that opportunity, because a lot of people that I've worked with and talked to that, you know, had things go on inside of them, that they had stuff they had been holding on to for 20 years, and they were able to, in an instant, talk to me about it. And I love it. I love to be able to be there for people in that manner, because then you give them a different perspective of it and help them see it a little bit differently and help them hopefully release it, and then they heal and then they change and things go on. Life gets better. So
yeah, it's an energy exchange.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
You have all this negativity, but if you keep bottling it up and, like, you know, the tough guy route, like, oh, I'm not going to talk about it, or like
that's taught, right?
Huh?
Especially as men, that's what we're taught. Oh, you got to be tough. Just ignore it. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Cry about it. Speak about it. Do what you got to do. Get it out of you. You know?
That's how you heal. Yeah. You have to get it out.
Yep. That's the only way you heal.
In a healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But, so we have about 15 minutes time check.
Well, I think we're good. I think we've put some good stuff out there. What are your thoughts? Do you have any closing thoughts or things you want to say?
No, just be on the lookout to our viewers. We'll be posting more content in the next few weeks, trying to get to a few posts per week instead of one or two. So make sure you hit that like, subscribe, share, and subscribe button.
Yeah, we appreciate anybody's support. We appreciate anybody's support, and you know, if any of this resonates with your soul, you know, dig deep. I have books and things I can recommend to people that really helped me grow deeply, like spiritually and internally. Helped me start to see life completely different, and just ways of practices that I use that I'm more than happy to share with people that have really helped my thinking and everything grow and change. So please feel free to reach out, I guess through comments or whatever, and I'll definitely am more than willing to help anybody that needs help. So
yeah, go ahead and comment down below sometime when you've had a small inspired action and you've seen the results.
Absolutely. That's good.
But thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys for your time. Nate, thank you. Appreciate you, brother. Love you.
I love you too, buddy.
All right, man. We'll see you next time.
All righty.